Hello, how are you doing? Good to be connected with you.
Good to be acquainted with you too. Thanks for joining us. So without much delay, we'll just get right into it. My name is David Adebayo. I lead the business growth and partnerships team at Sterling Bank. Under the partnerships team, we have also product development for education. I lead the strategy when it comes to an interesting aspect of driving education with Sterling. We'll get more into it as we talk, I'm sure. I have Otto Orondaam here. I hope I pronounced it correctly.
Yeah, you did.
I'll give you an opportunity to introduce yourself properly right now. So you can go ahead telling us about you and what your organization does.
Okay, so I'll say good evening again. My name is Orondaam Otto, and it's really a pleasure connecting with you guys at Sterling Bank. Today is a special day. It's the International Day of Education, and of course, we all know how important education is. We are all having this very inspiring and important conversation because we all have some form of education, right? If we weren't educated, if we weren't literate, we wouldn't be here. So it's interesting, to have a day that is set aside to celebrate and discuss, issues around education and how we can advance the cause of education. And my name again is Orondaam Otto. Otto is my surname, but people just love to call it first.
Oh really?
So I made it easier.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
I made it easier for them, by putting it first.
So, yeah, correct.
So they don't keep biting their tongues trying to pronounce Orondaam.
Yeah.
But I've always been very passionate about human capital development and one very important component besides health and youth empowerment, and every other aspect is education. Now, education is really the bedrock of any society. It's what determines how productive, how developed any society will be. And interestingly, we can tell the reality in our home country, Nigeria. I had always been worried about trying to fix this and trying to provide solutions to the growing challenges across the educational spectrum. And so in 2012, I realized that it wasn't just enough to keep complaining, and criticizing the government. We needed to do something. I had built so much experience in the previous years working across organizations and with several international youth-driven organizations. And so it was just important that I brought all those skills to bear. And so I founded an organization called Slum2School Africa.
That was brave, by the way. Very brave.
Yeah, I was working at the bank then. And so I just felt that I was wasting my time. Like, you have skills and competencies, you have a network of young people who are really very committed and passionate and want to really create an impact. So why don't you just maximize those skills? And so I founded the organization in 2012. I was a youth corps member. I was serving in Lagos State. So, deciding to leave the bank and go into remote communities to see how we could support children get into schools and get access to education was a very huge decision, that was not very, celebrated by friends and family. It wasn't something that people really, because it was
like,
very,
what the hell are you doing?
Of course, but I'll cut that story short because I think the purpose of today's session is really so much of Slum2School. But in about 9 years, we're going to be 9 years in February, we have grown from an organization that was just, a community development program into, I would say, an African-wide, organization with not just volunteers. We've worked with over 11,000 volunteers, but we have full-time staff working across different cities in Nigeria, working across different programs. We've supported over 107,000 children, providing educational scholarships. We've built so many learning centers. We've forged partnerships with over 500 organizations. It's just impressive seeing how what was just an idea has grown into impacting the lives of so many children. Today we have young people who are graduating from the university, who we supported 7 years ago, 6 years ago. We have young people across secondary schools, across universities, across primary schools, and it just shows that every young person, everyone has a potential to create a huge impact in their society, if only, our society provides the rights, I'll say the enabling environment to facilitate this.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, and
Thanks a lot.
shout out to all my friends, family, followers,
volunteers.
Volunteers. They are some of the most amazing people you can ever imagine. So that's just a brief. But besides Slum2School, I find myself sitting on boards, working with several development organizations, consulting for several non-profit social enterprises, corporate, governments, private, public sector. And I believe that the future of Nigeria is so bright. I believe that it takes so much guts to believe in Nigeria, because sometimes it sounds like you are really just, running nuts.
Yeah. It's quite tough. Yeah, I agree. Fascinating. I learning about what you've done. I think education has such a myriad of problems, right? And looking at what you've done, it's like you chose the hardest aspect of it, right? 10.5 million children out of school in the country, said to be one of the highest, in the world.
That number was in 2010.
Hey, so it's even grown more, right? Correct.
So in 2019, the number, the updated number is about 16.4 million out of school children.
Unbelievable.
And these are just numbers. These are numbers. It sounds like just data, but these are children. These are lives. These are real human beings.
People who will take over the society in only a few years.
Very true. Very true.
Yeah. So to give context to those that are just joining us, today is the International Day for Education, and we are here with Otto Orondaam, or Orondaam Otto, as he has corrected us. He's talking about what he's done with Slum2School. Interesting stuff. I would encourage everyone to look at slum2school.org and see some of the fascinating things he has done. I'm from Sterling. My name is David Adebayo. I lead the growth and partnerships team at Sterling Bank, right? We handle the strategy for education, and we have a fascinating. I say fascinating because it aligns with some of the things you are doing, right? We are trying to ensure that children have better learning outcomes using a platform that we have called EduBank. It's at edubank.ng. You can look at it as well. But we've taken a different approach in the sense that we have started from teachers, then we are going to schools, okay? So we have free training for teachers, then we are going to schools as well, and giving them a platform to run their school, bring some organization, bring some organization basically to the way they administer their schools, right? Then we are also going to look at financing parents for their words education, guardians, and even your own education if you want to do an MBA or some other tertiary stuff that we'll be bringing out in a few days. Right, having said that, let's just go forward to the questions and answers, some of which I'm sure you can provide enlightenment. If somebody is saying edubank.ng, it is EduBank with a C, no K, EduBank, B-A-N-C, E-D-U-B-A-N-C. So Otto, back to the questions. What would you say about the state of education, of the education system in Nigeria?
That's a very that's a very interesting question, and I believe that it's a question that everyone in this room would probably have very good answers, to give. But firstly, I always think it's important that we should always create context. Why? Yeah, when we say what's the state of education, it means that there's a foundation, there's a base that we are looking at, right? And if we go back a little bit in history, we'll see that we used to have the 654 educational formula, which meant 6 years of primary, 5 years of higher education, and then 4 years of tertiary education. Now, I think in 1983, if I'm not mistaken, we had the commission, the Minister of Education then, Babatunde Fafunwa. I think that was during the IBB presidency, when they realized that it was important to change that model. And it would be very interesting to find out one of the reasons why that was even changed from 5-4
to 6-3-3-4.
6-5-4 to 6-3-3-4.
Correct.
You know, now 6-3-3-4. If I want 6-3-3-4, one meaning 1 year of pre-primary, 6 years of primary, 3 years of junior secondary, 3 years of senior secondary, and 4 years of tertiary. 4 years of tertiary. Now, one of the things that initiated that thought was the fact that it was realized that not every young person was actually very smart. Not every young person was able to go through 6 years or then 5 years of secondary education.
Oh,
of secondary education.
Secondary, okay, in the middle, yeah, 6-5.
Yeah, and so it was broken down into 3 years of junior secondary and 3 years of senior secondary. Now, one of the decisions that was made then was the fact that if you are not very competent to go through, to complete your junior secondary school, and you didn't perform very well, you were not said to be so smart, then there wouldn't be a need for you to go further into senior secondary school. So you go learn a trade, you go learn a vocation, and so senior secondary school was designed for those who were really smart and who were academically, more outstanding. Now, that I would say in itself was one flaw, because every young person is smart. Everybody is intelligent. We have an educational system that is not designed to maximize the potential of people. And so you find people who are struggling in certain areas because we are operating a standardized model that is putting all square pegs in round holes, irrespective of your skills or competences.
So what you're saying is that it doesn't, putting square pegs in round holes, it doesn't exactly maximize our capacity to learn. Okay.
Of course, it's if you look at the traditional way of learning and what we call today the 21st century, skills or methodology of learning, we can see that traditional methodology of learning literally just has a standardized system where every monkey is judged by their ability to swim, and fishes are judged by their ability to climb trees. Yeah. And so you see students who are sent to science classes because they are intelligent, and others sent to art classes because they are dull.
Correct.
Forgetting that each child is intelligent in some specific area, and so it shouldn't be a one-size-fits-all approach. Every child needs to be given priority, And so for me, I always say 3 things are very important when looking at the state of education and what we really intend to do. How do we fix this? Because this has always been a conversation we've had over the years. What do we do as a nation? Firstly, I think we need to have a clear vision. What is the vision of what we want our educational systems to look like?
To be,
in fact, before we even talk about the educational system, what's the vision of what we want the country to be?
The country to look like, yeah.
Right, and I always try to put my friends on the spot. But I wouldn't want to put you on the spot now if I ask you, what's the vision of Nigeria?
Well, you just put me on the spot.
No, I'm not asking you. I'm just telling you I wouldn't want to put you on the spot, right? But the truth is, without a very clear vision, it's difficult to even determine the type of educational curriculum you would need to have.
Yeah.
And so we realize that everyone is copying different forms of curricula from different countries, either the American or the British or the Turkish or the Spanish or the Chinese. What's the Nigerian curriculum? What do we want the Nigerian child to be? Who do we want the Nigerian child to look like? What's the perfect example of a Nigerian graduate, right? And so vision is very important, because vision determines the direction that you go. Correct. And your education is just like the vehicle that takes you through that path. That's what's always lacking. And I can tell you today, if we bring all the ministers and all the members of the House and the Senate, chambers, and ask them what's the vision of Nigeria, we will find it difficult getting a consistent answer from everybody. And so the question is, how then do we invest so much money in an educational system that does not have a clear vision for its teachers, for its educators, for its learners? So vision is very important.
Yeah, so
now,
basically
another thing that is also...
The first thing is we should define a vision that everybody can go, that can back,
very important.
That is in
very
the hearts
important.
of everyone.
Very important. I don't want to emphasize on that so much, but you can see that so many countries across the world have clear visions, and their development plan is centered around that. Now, another very important thing is competence. Putting square holes or square pegs in square holes, round pegs in round holes, and we see this so much, you know, in politics and even in governance, where because you are a political leader, you're now made the, you know, a chairman of the education board. Because you are a friend of a political figure, you're made a minister of education. You know, because you are a political you know, campaign manager, you are made a commissioner for education, without so much, you know, emphasis on competence. And so, how do you ensure to, you know, how do you ensure driving an educational agenda when those at the helm of affairs do not have the right competences, do not have the right skills, and even the right passion? So, the competence is extremely very important. From teachers to school administrators, to policymakers, to education boards, to ministers, to commissioners, everyone needs to have a very clear vision and backed with the competence. And the third I'll always say is the resource. Now, funding is a very important resource. Of course, we have so many forms of resources, but funding is very critical. And if I should ask another question, how much does the Nigerian government, and I'm using Nigeria because in this case, or in this context, we're discussing, you know, we're discussing Nigeria. How much does the Nigerian government spend on one child? I'm very certain that you can't find that anywhere. And even the Minister of Education would not be able to tell us. I'm 50% certain.
What would we do? Is it how much do we spend on one child, or what's the cost of educating one child?
You know, those are semantics, but it means the same thing. How much do we spend, right, as a nation? What's the cost of educating one child? And if we look across the world, you could see, you know, I've been to the US and I've spoken to education secretaries in states and even at the federal level, and they draw their budgets based on the number of children in counties and states and even at the federal level. Now, that determines a lot of things, because if you do not even know the number of young people you want to educate, how are you designing the budgets? You know, when last did we have a census to know the population of our learners across communities, across states, across local governments? Yeah. When last did we decide that we needed to build new schools because the population has risen by, say, 50% or 100% or 200%? Now, if we look at a number of countries, Finland, we know, is one of the most outstanding countries when it comes to education. We always talk about, correct. You know, now Finland they don't have private schools, they don't have standardized tests. The government literally owns almost 100% of the schools, public schools. So it tells you the quality of the public schools. When you see a nation, or when you see a country that has more private schools than public schools, then you know there's a problem.
90% of the education, value is from private. Just
and so you see that there's a problem. Now, it's very important to ensure that the government, you know, it's a failure of public education that gives rise to private education. Today, we have private educators and private schools that charge, you know, ridiculous sums of money that can literally not be afforded by the average student. So how are we ensuring that there's equality in the quality of learning that everyone is getting? It's literally not possible. Finland as a country spends about $10,000 per annum on a child. Japan spends about $10,200 as well, you know, per annum for a child. Now, these are countries that make their budgets and take into context the individual, you know, needs of every child, every learner. The US spends, I think that they're one of the highest spenders when it comes to education, about $12,800 per child. You know, and of course, last year we could see what their education budget was. In Nigeria, I think our budget for 2020 was about 6.7% of
Correct.
our
Correct.
of our budget, which in
I think
itself,
budget has it to be about 5.62. And my own calculation was about 6 point something. Yeah,
6.7.
Yeah,
6.7. Yeah,
I think I
6.7% of
harmonized
that
with
budget.
correct.
Yeah, but 2021 was about 5 points. Now it's reduced from 2019 to 2020 to 2021. Now that was about 691 billion naira. If we compare that to the budget of the US had about 24 trillion naira. If we should compare both budgets, we're looking at 691 billion naira and 24 trillion naira.
So for the smart people that are on this call who would say, well, the percentage doesn't matter, or rather, doesn't it have to do with the amount? But in this particular case, the percentage shows how seriously you are taking that sector. How is that correct?
Of course. What it means is that you're prioritizing your education.
Correct.
Right? Because it's only when you have okay, let me paint a very quick picture. Now, today Nigeria is said to be the I think the 7th or the 8th most populous nation in the world.
Mm-hmm.
In less than 30 years, we are going to be the 3rd most populous nation in the world. We have about 200 million people today. In 10 years or in 30 years, we're going to have 400 million.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when we look at these realities, it's a huge, clarion call for all of us to be on high alerts.
Yeah.
It means that we are going to have, in less than 30 years, we're going to have almost 115 young people who are going to be born. So what kind of education are they going to have? What kind of infrastructure do we need to build? How do we prepare for this emerging generation? What's the career, options? How do we even maximize that huge population to benefit our nation? You see, so countries.
You've talked about 3 things. I want to make sure that we don't lose the audience, because you've talked about 3 things. You've talked about the vision, you've talked about the competence, you've talked about resources, and we're trying to describe from all of these points that you've talked about, what we are trying to have an idea. What is the state of the education system? And from what I can hear, obviously it looks dire. It looks like an emergency situation. Something needs to be done urgently in all of those areas which you have mentioned. Correct?
You're definitely correct.
Yes. Then there's something I need to talk about very quickly, because talking about education by itself might not be optimal, right? Because what occurs to me right now is a book I read. I think it was Hans Rosling, right? Factfulness, where he talked about everything that feeds into what actually educates a child. Is the mother healthy? Can she fend for herself? If we have unhealthy children, you will have more children because you expect the ones that you have to die. And so you need to take care of everything from poverty to gender equality to all of these things need to be taken care of almost simultaneously, which speaks to your idea of vision. That would have been captured in that aspect of what you have talked about. So very quickly now, if we're to proceed, how can schools leverage the digital phase of learning, especially with the reality of Nigeria's economy, something which I just talked about? What would you say is the role of organizations like yours or organizations like mine in looking at the reality, the pandemic? We have all of these issues which you've described and which you have talked about. Then we have a pandemic that is taking people who are not even enough. I mean, not enough people are going to school, right? And then now we have a pandemic that is sending many people back home, and we need to adapt to it. Okay, so what can schools do in this situation? How can they migrate from this chalk, like is our topic today, or our theme rather, to a digital learning system? And how can we carry the good aspect? How can we not lose those things, for example, the personal touch, you know, just help us, just talk about it a bit.
So I think that is a very important question, and what I think is very important beyond even looking at how schools need to even include technology is understanding the reason for the inclusion of technology, right?
Right.
The question is why is it urgent? Why is it important? Why is it relevant that schools must be, must attribute utmost priority to inclusion of technology and ensuring that the learners are not left behind. Now, when we look at the world as we have it today, when we see where we are coming from, the 19th century, when education was literally focused on what I would call regularity, ensuring that everybody just followed the same methodology. Into the 20th century, where emphasis was now on compliance, conformity over creativity. Today, those realities have changed. We are in a generation where the Gen Z and the Alpha generation literally grew up with technology.
Right.
They had technology at the tip of their fingers from all forms of digital computers and tablets and laptops and iPads. So we need to also ensure that our education system is changing. The realities are changing. What we had taught in 5 years today might not be the reality. There was a research done by Dell Technology that made mention, that in about 10 years, which is in 2030, over 85% of the jobs that exist today would no longer be in existence. Or rather, it was put in this way: 85% of the jobs in 2030 have not yet been invented or have not yet been created.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is very important, because how do you teach a generation that is going into a future where the jobs that will exist, you do not even know?
Right.
And so we see the reality across our schools, across our universities, and this is a huge concern. How are we ensuring that we are moving with the speed of times? How are we ensuring that, look at 10 years ago, apps like Instagram, WhatsApp, Canva, Zoom, SlideShare, majority of what we use today was not in existence.
Correct.
Majority of the careers and the jobs we even have today, when you look at, someone who would say, I'm a social media manager, I'm a data analyst, there's so many careers that never existed 5 years ago, 10 years ago. So how are we preparing young people for that future? It's important that as educators, as teachers, as school owners, as the government takes importance in understanding the rapid change in the ecosystem. Dubai has a minister of the future, and that's one thing that always amazes me when you look at how fast that country is that region is growing. They have a ministry of the future, a department that literally just focuses on looking at the trends for the next 20 years and 50 years and trying to bring that reality into the present and preparing their country to be ahead of the curve. We still have an education system that I would say operates by the methodologies of the 20th century, and in some cases of the 19th century, where we still have traditional learning system against 21st century learning system. Where a teacher is the lord and master of the class. He's the one who knows everything, and so the student must just sit and get. Whereas in today's 21st learning system, you have the student who is literally the lord of the class. He or she knows even ahead of the lecturer because he has that information at the tip of his or her finger. When the student is passionate about what he or she is learning, because of course we will go back to the conversation where students are just in classrooms because they are forced to be in classrooms. They are not excited to be in those classrooms. And so it's important that schools start understanding the future, of learning, how disruptive technology would help with automation, artificial intelligence, robotics, machine learning, cloud computing, gamification. There's so much that could be done with technology in ensuring that children are kept ahead of the curve. And so schools, no matter how remote you are, no matter how underdeveloped you are, there's so much you could do. I remember a story I read some years ago about a school somewhere, at the northern region of Kumasi in Ghana, where a teacher didn't have access to laptops or computers, but he needed to prepare his 15 and 16-year-old high school students for the ICT exam. And so he used a chalkboard and used multiple colors of chalk to draw a Microsoft window, literally replicating what a Microsoft window looked. And this was a remote community without, recently there was a similar story of a teacher using stones, and teaching children how to move the mouse.
Oh yeah, right? I saw that.
Now, the story of the teacher who drew the Microsoft window on a blackboard with multiple colors of chalk went viral, drew lots of international attention. And Microsoft reached out and provided laptops for that school. Now, we've seen so many realities where corporate organizations are getting involved in the development of communities. This is a reality that the world, we have businesses that are no longer just centered on profit making, but most importantly on people development. So it still takes us back to the conversation where we need to have clear visions that will ensure that corporate organizations, private organizations, civil society, non-profit, social enterprises can all work together in harmony.
And collaborate,
to pursue that vision, because it's no longer competition but collaboration.
Again, that vision comes up. That vision is necessary. Without that vision, we're just winging it. Can you hear me?
Very true. Of course, very true.
So before we go to the next question, again, I don't want us to just look at the what is required or the fact that we need to train our students towards those things that will be relevant in the near future, right? If you think about it, a lot of things have to happen at the same time as well. For example,
of course,
the internet access, is it available? The financials or the finances required to purchase devices that will help these people stay connected, is that being prepared for? All those things also need to be considered. In your own case, your new, I don't know what you call it though, but your virtual learning
classroom, yeah.
Yes. How did you do that? How did you prepare students for that experience? How is it that they were able to purchase devices? How is it that they were able to purchase headsets? How is it that they know what time it is? How come they are connected to the internet? Who provides all of that? Is there something that you can tell people who would like to do something like that? Is that something that you can tell them about your experience setting that up?
So again, now we launched the Virtual Learning Studio in 2020. Time flies so much. It feels like we're still in that year. But it was because we understood that the world literally is changing. Today we can say what's the importance of learning online. I see lots of people, a lot of conversations, around the importance of online learning and how it is. But the reality is that 10 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, even 10 years ago, you would not sit in your office or from the comfort of your home to buy goods or products from Amazon or Alibaba in totally different parts of the world, and in 2 days it's been delivered to your doorstep.
Yeah.
The world has rapidly changed. We have technology disrupting a lot of these things. And why shouldn't online learning also be the same? Why shouldn't education also be the same? Why must we sit and expect to use a 20th century methodology in a 21st century world? And so we understood that online learning was very important. There's so many advantages to that. Now, because you're not used to something does not mean it's never going to work. Because you have never done something in a certain way does not also mean that if you try it and if you stick to it and if you work with it, it will never work. And so we've seen the importance of online learning. There's so many of them. The fact that children can sit in the comfort of their homes today and learn content from any part of the world. So you're not restricted to just what your teacher will give you. You can sit down and get content from the best professors in Harvard or Yale or Stanford. You know, a teacher from any part of the world can teach a student in any part of the world. So first of all, it limits the boundaries, right? You have lectures that could be taken and repeated at any point in time. Many years ago, or even in today's, you know, schools, a teacher comes to the front of the class and is shouting and speaking to 200 or 500 or 1,000 students. And once that class is over, you can't even remember what he or she said. But with online learning, you can repeat your classes. You can watch regular classes.
Yes.
You can replay, and you can always even go back and watch content from different people. You know, so you see that there's so many advantages. You know, the fact that you can scale that, it reduces the cost. You know, you're not limited by time and space. You know, teachers can easily assess the performance of students in real time using various forms of learning management systems, where rather than, you know, asking students, raise your hand if you, and you can't even tell who's raising their hand in a classroom of 200 learners. You know, but with technology, a simple poll, you can tell what a child is learning, you can tell who understands what, you can see the scores, you can give them an instant test, and they can deliver that in 5 minutes, and you can access them. There's so much that could be done with virtual learning, and that was what we realized. Now, we were not extremely prepared for that, but we were able to walk around it using the realities around us, and we built that virtual classroom. We got partners like Eat and Go, you know, Cold Stone, Domino's, Alitial Capital, Prudential Zenith, ESPN. You know, there were a number of organizations that came on board when we had reached out to build the first virtual learning studio. We got tablets, we got headsets, we got internet, MTN provided data, and we connected close to 1,000 learners across several communities, over 10 communities during the pandemic, into the virtual learning classroom. Now, that experience for us was really impactful because we saw lots of things we could do well and lots of things we could improve on. We saw how the learning progress and the results had improved within very short periods of time. And so it's become very imperative for us to know that, or to understand that in today's world, learning will no longer be traditional the way it has always been. You know, we talk about the 21st century learning skills, and most of the skills can be developed even learning virtually. You know, we talk about the learning skills, the literacy skills, and the life skills. You know, the learning skills, I think there are about 4 C's: critical thinking, creativity, communication, collaboration. Now, these are very important skills that are needed in the 21st century.
I do have a question, though. I do have a question, right? Like, when you think about it, right, given all of this that is happening, there are still certain advantages to in-class learning. For example, as the teacher of certain pupils, right, you can be there for them emotionally. For example, you can tell when someone is going through stuff by the way the person is responding in classrooms. Doesn't the online experience take away that personal touch? What would we be able to do to ensure that personal touch still remains? You know, given this migration, or do we match it? Should schools, you know, mix it up? Some of it being online, some of it being offline, or should people, you know, what
I think the foundation of that problem actually even comes from a point where the school became extremely responsible for so many things. Now, there's different forms of education. We have we have 4 different types of education. Now, the formal education is literally what students go into the classroom, the 4 walls of the classroom to get. We have informal education. We have intra-formal education. We have now, the home is also a very important form or important place that education should take place. The community is another very important place that education should take place, right? But we'll see that parents at some point left the responsibility of teaching to the school.
Yeah.
The community also left the responsibility of teaching to the school, but over 70% of learning happens outside the classroom. Yeah. So the teacher, in so many instances, is not even socially and psychosocially prepared to handle emotional issues. So why do you think that the classroom now is the best place where the teacher should be observing 30 pupils? In some cases, even in our public schools, you have 100 pupils. And an incompetent teacher who doesn't understand, you know, psychology or guidance and counseling, and so it's important to ensure that every part of the society, from the family, the community, the religious homes, you know, be the mosque or the churches or the synagogues, wherever religion or the traditional centers, everybody is playing the role of educating the child. Now, there's so many forms of education that could happen, even watching a television program, watching a video online. And so it's not a one size fits all. No one says that.
I get it.
No one says, you know, today we're talking about blended learning, where you have either in classroom or online form of learning. The bottom line is we are still experimenting all of this as a society. I mean, at large, the global society, no one knows what is best. So we are on earth to experiment, right? And whatever you think works best and whatever helps you maximize the resources. Look at a country like Nigeria, where we have literally 16 million children who are out of school. How many schools can we build to accommodate 16 million children today? How many schools? Where do we get such resources from? You know, how can we be more innovative in ensuring that we take learning into communities? The churches can be schools. The mosque can be schools, because these things are open only once a week in most cases. You know, community youth can be teachers. Teachers, you know, students do not have to go into a classroom to even get some form of learning. There's so much that could be done. And I think it's important that we start.
I mean, education is the community effort. It shouldn't be left to the schools or to the particular teacher. Okay, we are running out of time. I think we have 17 minutes, and we should take some questions from the audience very shortly. I wanted to speak to what parents can do to ensure that this digital phase, their kids or their words can be prepared for it. My own contribution in that area is to create, because another thing with digital learning is that you would have to admit that there's a sense of, there's a connection with your environment when you go to school. Okay, there's a mindset that you have. If you say, okay, I am going to school right now, you're going to school with a mind to learn. And then if your bedroom now becomes your classroom, there has to be some psychological imbalance. I think you should understand what I mean. So I think parents can, you know, create an atmosphere of learning by dedicating a particular aspect of the house, just the way you would have a study or something for a child's learning, so that even in your house, that child can have that psychological awareness, okay, to go into that room, into that place, or into that space and go and learn. You understand what I mean? I think that's what parents can do. Then
I think that I would say there are maybe 2 or 3 or 4 things that parents should do. You know, one very important thing is parents need to understand that, you know, the world is changing. Careers must not be conventional anymore. Your child should not just be a doctor, engineer, accountant, lawyer. Your child can be a musician. Your child can be a makeup artist. Your child can be a painter.
An African woman, parents would shoot you.
It's very important. Today, we see young 17, 16, 15-year-olds influencers making millions of naira on TikTok, you know, and Instagram. You know, the world of technology is opening so many doors. You know, parents also need to understand that the teaching should not just be left to the teacher. They should also play an important role. You know, don't just say go to school and come back and learn. You know, there should be comfortable. Parents should be comfortable with allowing their children explore the use of digital devices, explore technology, explore the internet. Of course, you would say the internet is filled with lots of things and lots of things that could be harmful. But if you do not prepare them, you know, one of the things I love that our kids always say is if you do not prepare them, they would still learn, and most likely learn from the wrong set of people.
Correct.
So whatever you think you're protecting them from, you know, instead of building walls to protect them from the ills of the internet, build bridges, teach them those things before they see them. You know, the wall is,
I think in this particular case, right? In this particular case, it's one of those funny situations where you punish the tool, okay? Because you think that tool can be used for wrong. So you say, you know what? Let's throw out the baby and the bathwater. But that tool can be used for good, you know, and so you should focus on getting the words, your kids, your, you know, people who you have supervision over to use the tool of the internet for good. One very important thing I think I probably would have left out is parents should be able to listen as well. Listen, be available to listen to your young ones. Because so many times, you know, the regular African parent, you know, doesn't want the child to speak when adults are speaking. Doesn't want the child to disturb them. But so many times these young people might want that emotional support. They might want to share something that bothers them with you. But if you're not available to listen to them, to talk to them, they would probably look for the wrong people to talk to. So being available is not just but being able to be available. Okay, thanks a lot. So I think our time is fast spent. I think we can take some 10 minutes before we wrap up to take questions from the audience. So if you can hear me, you can type your questions away and I will pick one of them and address them, right? So for those who joined in the middle of it and you're wondering what's going on here, who is on screen here. So I have here Otto Orondaam, or Orondaam Otto, as he has corrected us. He's the founder of Slum2School, who is doing amazing things with teaching kids who do not have some of the benefits that we've enjoyed. Okay, and some of them have grown. I saw some of them doing TED Talks. I saw the TED Talks of some of them as well. Very interesting stuff. My name is David Adebayo. I'm from Sterling Bank. I lead the business growth and partnerships team. And I also am directing the strategy around EduBank, a platform to add value to stakeholders in the education sector. Any questions? Okay, I think that's the introduction. We had mentioned that we are here celebrating or observing. I think observing is more correct. Observing the International Day of Education. Today, January 24th, is the International Day of education, and we are sitting here and talking about how education can contribute to sustainable development, how education can contribute to a peaceful society, how education is the bedrock and the foundation for how you will build a nation. So any questions? If you have questions, please go ahead and ask them. I have one more question for us to sort out before we go. And that is, in a virtual environment, right? How do you handle the effectiveness of virtual classes on kids? How do you measure it? How do you say this kid has learned? I think you adduced to it when you're talking about what you set up, right? And you said that you can administer tests, you know, you can, but then there's always the issue, like there was a funny situation where a kid tried to deceive a professor by making it seem like his submission for an assignment wasn't loading, right? So he got a screenshot of a page that is still loading and rolling, right? And it was supposed to be an image he would submit for his assignment. And the professor kept, you know, clicking to find out, no, this thing is not loading. Meanwhile, the guy didn't actually do that assignment. So all those tricks can come up, you know. How do you exactly measure? Number two is, how do you even know? Does it have to always be a video call? What about remote areas? How do you know? How do you know that the kid on the other end is actually learning?
Okay, so I think the question takes us, or your question again takes us to the purpose of learning. You know, why the first question we should ask is, why is that child, you know, trying to be smart? Of course, the child is naturally smart, but why are they trying to, or why is he or she trying at that point to I would say, cut corners? You would realize that in some instances, the child probably does not even like that course. He or she does not even understand the reason why submitting the assignment is important. They can't connect. They can't even connect, you know, the relevance of that subject to the future or the career of their choice or what they want to become in future. So we need to firstly make education interesting. Education today is really boring. Sometimes I ask myself, why did I have to study certain courses back in school? And I have so many young people who ask me, why are we studying this? You know, of what importance is leveling 17 parts of a grasshopper going to help with the complexity of the world, right? And so people really do not understand why these things are important. So I think it's important that we try to introduce forms of education that gives us instant, I would say, results in terms of analyzing the performance of learners. There's so many ways you could use gamification today to get students results in real time. And it's proven so many times to be very more effective. You know, so how can we infuse technology and education into a huge solution that makes learning more interesting, more, you know, adaptive, more exciting for young people? Virtual reality and augmented reality, immersive learning can take students to different parts of the world in real time. How are we ensuring that we bring that experience to young people? You know, how are we getting, you know, how are we bringing the future of learning into the present in our classrooms? When you bring certain subjects, you know, we saw so many instances where we gave these young people tablets, we gave them, and most of them even left the courses they were supposed to do and started exploring new courses. You know, they finished the course of work and started browsing new videos because they had devices. We saw situations and instances where some of these young people started building, you know, robots, building. We had a young boy who built a social distancing app. Now, a device in a child's hand gives the child access to so many opportunities, and so we shouldn't see these things as bottlenecks, but actually as pathways to a better future for young people.
Fantastic. So I have questions coming in. What support has Sterling given to in education? Oh, fabulous. Luckily, you can go to EduBank right now, edubank.ng. You see, what we are trying to do, and our approach to it is like this, right? We are looking at all the problems that we have in education right now and seeing what areas we can play in. So, for example, we know that Otto mentioned, I mean, during the conversation, that many of these teachers are not even well trained. Okay, that's a popular and well-known fact in education. We remember what happened in Kaduna, for example. And so EduBank has set up a free teacher training initiative where teachers can go online and actually learn some of the things that make them better at communicating, at emotional intelligence, at class management, at digital skills, many of the things that you've talked about. Then also EduBank has a robust school management system, and I'm trying to answer that question that person is saying in collaboration, of course, with one of our partners, because we like partnerships, which is why I had mentioned to you earlier that we should do things together, right? We like partnerships. In collaboration with one of our partners called Schoolable, we are bringing school management systems to school to bring organizations into the way they administer their schools. And we are looking at other areas. We have a donation platform, which the funds will be used to ensure that the teacher training remains free. Even though, I mean, we will do the partnership, we will fund it, but we encourage people to donate as well to ensure there is some sustainability that is tied into educating these teachers. And then obviously we would also do tuition finance, etc. We have quite a pipeline of things that we are doing. So somebody's asking here, how do we identify credible platforms for learning? Okay, I just talked about teachers. So if you're a teacher, you can go to edubank.ng. There's a credible platform right there. But there are very many popular ones like edX from Harvard and MIT. There is Coursera also, which is quite popular. Udemy is also a credible platform for learning. Otto, are there platforms that you would suggest?
Of course, today's world, I will always say go online. The internet is your best friend. Any information you want, you'll find it. I could be giving you an outdated information. So maximize your device. What you use to type this information, you can use it to get more updated information. But like you said, there's EDX, there's Coursera, there's Udemy, there's Udacity. There's so many platforms for massive, online learning programs. But you should be your best friend. Use the internet and maximize the opportunities it has. There's so much you can get from this device in your hand. There's so much information, there's so much resource, there's so much money you can make by just maximizing the device you have. So use it, and I'm sure you can get all.
I think that's the much we can take right now. We are nearing the end of our.
I see a question. Someone is asking if we have programs in the nuts. Of course, we.
Oh, okay. I can't see it on my screen. I forgot it.
Yeah, we do. But go on the slum2school.org/get involved. And Slum2School, the careers page on the website, you'll see we have job opportunities. We're launching a project which is very interesting in Kaduna, in Nasarawa, and in Niger this month to support about 550,000 children. So if you're in those states, if you're in that region, in the northern region, you can check online, and there'll be so many ways for you to get involved. Of course, we have job opportunities.
Correct? They can volunteer with you now, right?
Interestingly, we just launched our volunteer application for the year. So if you go on the Get Involved page, you would see all the links to the various opportunities and ways you can sign up to be part of what we do. And it's a very interesting community. You can come into our office in Lagos. If you're in Lagos, we are in Lekki, the Slum2School Innovation Hub. From your Google map, you can find it. And we are really looking forward to all the amazing things we're going to do together this year. Of course, with Sterling Bank as well.
Fantastic. So this is Sterling Bank. My name is David. I've had Otto Orondaam almost for the last 1 hour discussing and celebrating and commemorating and basically observing the International Day of Education. Sterling Bank has certain focus areas. We are focusing on health, we are focusing on education, we're focusing on renewable energy, we're focusing on agriculture, we're focusing on transportation. If you forget all of those focus areas, or if you think about those focus areas, you realize those are areas that need intervention, that need help, basically, in this country, and we are trying to make an impact. I like to see what we do as impact-driven, even though we are using technology to drive it. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. I want to thank you, Otto, for joining us today. Thank you very much. Thank you for answering all these questions. Thank you for talking about all the many things that we can do. And for all the audience as well, thank you for joining us. I hope to see you some other time. Otto, please, we'll talk soon.